comments related generally to Nelson. If you are here to speak in reference to the special use permit, budget adoption, supplemental appropriation, that would be those public, actually, those aren't public hearings, are they? Are they public hearings? Yes, they are. If you're speaking to one of those, that would be a great time to speak there. So, Mr. McGann, are you speaking for the special use permit or public comments?
Both.
The special use permit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Both.
Oh, both?
Both.
All right, well, come on up. You got 3 minutes. State your name and address for the record. And Mr. Reed here is going to keep track. He'll try to give you a 30-second warning.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
I ain't got much to say about the deal.
Ready?
I just on the special use permit.
Need your name.
Oh, name and address.
My name is Dave McGann, Athens, Virginia, on 1032 Crawford View Road. I'm just here today just to sit back and see what the supervisors are going to do about this special use permit on Airbnbs and see if there's going to be any laws that they're going to force on other counties and what they're going to do, and just see and get the public knowledge on it. And then after that, I'll see if I can put my input out. That's all I need to say for right now. I might be back later.
Sounds good. All right, anyone else wish to speak in the public comment section of this agenda? This is just the public comments. We haven't gotten to the special use permit yet. All right. Anyone else wish to speak in public comments? None? Close the public comment section of this agenda. Moving on to public hearing, special use permit 998, vacation house. Emily.
All right. So this is a special use permit application for a vacation house in R1. The dwelling is already existing, as you can see there. I can zoom in on that with a little bit of difficulty if you want me to. A special use permit is required in R1 to be able to do a vacation house. The property contains an existing single-family dwelling. The narrative provided by the applicants indicates that this is one owner's primary residence and the other owner's part-time residence until she retires. They're requesting to utilize the dwelling as a vacation house or short-term rental 2 to 3 weekends per month. And then we have a few definitions here. A vacation house is a house rented to transients. Rental arrangements are made for the entire house, not by room. And the definition of a transient is a guest or boarder, one who stays for less than 30 days and whose permanent address for legal purposes is not the lodging or dwelling unit occupied by that guest or boarder. The area is residential and commercial in nature with some agricultural uses as well. Zoning in the vicinity is R1, A1, and B1. There are no floodplains located on this property. This property is accessed by an existing entrance on Rockfish Valley Highway, so UDOT had no comments. And the house is served by existing utilities. The Nelliesford area is designated as the county's only neighborhood mixed-use development model. It is further identified as a primary development area. This model supports a central gathering place able to fulfill the diverse needs and interests of nearby residents and visitors to the county, all within a focused, walkable, and identifiable place. So at the meeting in August with the Planning Commission, they were actually unable to make a motion. There was a failed motion to recommend approval. It failed with a vote of 2 to 4. And there were no subsequent motions, and so, like I said, there's no recommendation from the Planning Commission. The approval of special use permits should be based on the following factors. The use shall not tend to change the character and established pattern of development of the area or community in which it is proposed to locate. The use shall be in harmony with the uses permitted by right in the zoning district and shall not affect adversely the use of the neighboring property. The proposed use shall be adequately served by essential public or private water and sewer facilities, and the proposed use shall not result in the destruction, loss, or damage of any feature determined to be of significant ecological, scenic, or historical importance. We also have an additional public comment that we received this evening that should be there in your packets, scanned in, copied, or placed on a few of your desks. But yeah, if you have any questions for me, and then the applicants are here as well.
Okay. Any questions for Emily before we go to the applicant, and then public hearing, and then any other questions after that? Okay with going on to the applicant?
Yeah, I've got a few questions after.
Let's do that. All right, if the applicants could come forward.
Good evening, my name is Gretchen Rush. I live at 2617 Rockbridge Valley Highway in Ellsworth. I'm Glenda McNeil and I'm co-owner, and I come up on weekends. I'm waiting to retire. I'm 25, come soon enough. Yeah, my address is 5414 Creek Heights Drive, Chesterfield, Virginia. But I also do 2617 Rockfish.
Great.
We're here to get permission for a special use permit, and we have addressed any of the concerns that the planning committee put up. We have now our neighbor who actually wrote the letter that you have, Penny Harris, is agreed to be the on-site manager when we're not there. She lives right next door, she's the closest neighbor. We have also planted trees on either side to help buffer. We have an enclosed area for dogs. And we feel that we've limited the amount of people that can come to the place because we had no complaints about, from the Water and Sewer Commission. They kept, we had no problems with that. We're just trying to go through what we need to do legally for you guys and go on from there. And I'm Gretchen. I just want to address the first criteria in the classification to get a special use permit. And if you look at the GIS on the Nelson County website, it is very much a mixed use neighborhood. And, you know, I measured in my car, I've measured in my bicycle. I mean, we have to get to the post office and the auto zone, it's like 200 feet. On the other side of the Harris's, there's another Airbnb. 500 feet down the road on the agricultural side of 151, there's another Airbnb. Three Notch Brewery is less than a half a mile away from us. Right directly across from our street is a hay farm. So it is just, there's all kinds of stuff going on in our neighborhood. That's what makes it wonderful. We do have neighbors, neighbors that have been there for 40 years. And we're kind of the new kids on the block. So we understand that this has caused some difficulty in the neighborhood, and we've opened our home. We've had an open house. We've addressed the neighbors that voiced complaints at last the planning commission, and we think we've addressed all the issues that they had. So we feel very confident coming before you that we've tried to cross off all the things that were necessary to apply for the permit. So thank you very much for listening to our request.
Great.
And as far as the traffic is, she's here during the week because she's actually teaching at West Alamo during the week. So she's there. So when she's not there, somebody else's car is there. So it's, you know, give and take. It's not like we're increasing the amount. And if anything, we're hopefully making this property look better and help the neighborhood. Thank you.
Great. Any questions for the applicant at this time? We may ask for you to come back up after the public hearing. Do you want to wait till the public hearing?
Can we make comments?
Do you want to wait till after the public hearing, or do you want to do it now?
I'll do it now.
Okay.
Look, it's a wonderful community, and that's why you're here.
Exactly.
And I welcome you. I don't know why I should be able to do that, but I do. And I like your looks and all that. We're in this community under assault in a way by these bed and breakfasts and all this stuff. And we're really sensitive to that. And, you know, you judge people's motives and everything. And I think we've gotten to a point where we just don't want to expand that. And I know you want you want to live here and probably this will make it easier. But you don't know, it might be more of a problem than you think. And we've just gone through this whole thing with a comprehensive plan. And it's just difficult to approve anything at this time.
Our timing is, it's been made aware this is terrible timing. Just a little background in it. We did not anticipate applying for a special use permit. I got a job at Wintergreen. There's hundreds, if not 1,000, Airbnb rentals in Nelson County, depending where you look.
Well, thousands.
1,000. I mean, I
Yeah.
did way more research than I like to tell you about. And I've tried to figure out how many people get special use permits, but there's so little people that live in a residential area. So, we're a little bit late. We're doing it back as
I
what my dad
appreciate
was saying.
that,
So
the fact you
we
live
were
here.
we were not in compliance. So we're trying to catch up. And so that's why we applied now. And we totally understand that the Christ, the crux of the matter, that this may not be what's best for the community. But on the other hand, we are fulfilling the criteria that is there. And, we don't really feel like it's, I hate the word fair, but, to have one 2 doors down and one 5 doors down, just because of where they're located, they don't have to apply for a special use permit, or that Wintergreen doesn't have to apply for a special use permit, or they don't. So, it just feels like the buck's stopping with Gretchen and Glenda because of today. That doesn't seem like a legitimate reason to say no.
Let's save up for after the public.
Yeah.
Hearing. Any other questions before we go to the public hearing? Give us, we're gonna go to the public hearing for this time. All right, we now open the public hearing for special use permit number 998 Vacation House R1 2617 Rockfish Valley Highway. The rules are the same as they are for the public comments. State your name and address for the record. You're given 3 minutes to speak. If you're speaking on behalf of a group, please specify that group, and the chair may recognize you for 5 minutes. If more time is needed to finish your comments, the chair may give you an extra 30 seconds to wrap up your thoughts. So first on the list we got tonight is Paul Davis.
Paul Davis, 2514 Rockfish Valley Highway, Nelly's Ford. I don't know whether I'm speaking for a group, but Donna Small, who's here, asked me to speak for her. Does that count? Because she has some dental work. I don't know. I tried to get her to, but she has some things she wanted me to say, but she is here.
Just get going. Let's see how long it takes you.
All right. My concerns, it has nothing to do with the applicants personally. It's about it is what it is. It's a residential. It would become a business and a residential with a special use permit. And the big concern I have, special use permits, and I found this out from you guys, it stays with the property, not with the owner. So someone could move, they could end up selling, moving, come and put another story on that house. Then you got 2 stories, people in the residential. There's all kinds of things. And I'm not looking at so much about the individual address as I am for the county. Once we start doing this, the special use permit, it stays with the property. It changes the county forever. The county, not just this one address for residential, once we start doing this. And from my understanding, I am totally unaware, these special use permits, I'm not aware of any enforcement or follow-up. Is there anybody at the county that goes from time to time to even see if they're doing what all special use permits are doing, what they're supposed to be doing? That I don't know. But the other big thing I'll go ahead and say about Donna, what she wanted me to say about is it's not like the battle right. This is residential. It is what it is, and it's terrible for the applicants, but it is residential. The Airbnb becomes a business, and they have good intentions now, but it stays with the property, and that's out of their hands and your hands and my hands. And so if it's approved in a residential, this is setting the county up for some issues down the road, not with just one address. It could go everywhere. So that's my major concern. But then the big thing is the follow-up. There's no follow-up or enforcement as far as I'm aware of special use permits. Once they're issued, unless neighbors complain or bring it to the county, I don't think there's a county officer that goes around and see if people are complying. But with the numbers being given, it might be something that's going to be needed down the road. Thank you.
2 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, sir. Moving, all right, Donna, are you speaking?
No.
All right. David? State your name and address for the record.
My name is Dave McGann, 1032 Crossview Road, Athens, Virginia. Here tonight, sitting here, just trying to take the input of people's applications, people's input on why they against it, and the input of the supervisors of, and their input on bed and breakfasts, Airbnbs, and like the gentleman was saying right here, that it's coming to where everywhere you're looking at the house beside you is Airbnb or bread and muffins or somebody's written it out to do something. Nobody knows who really living there. If he was native of Nelson County and we keep on allowing people to buy these houses out here just to make money in it, our residents and the kids that we got here cannot stay here. If the parents ain't got land to give them a piece. And they can't buy them because these people are making money on it and not living there. So that is my input tonight, just to see what the supervisor's up to and what is the input on the public, which we don't know how much notified these people are because you can tell by the crowd. They don't know what I'm saying. And so that's my concern. I'm here for the county and the public people and the natives of Nelson County. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to SUP 998 Vacation House? We'll give you an opportunity to respond in a little bit. There's nobody else who wishes to speak in the public comments. We'll now close the public comment section. Before we get back to the applicants, are there any questions for Emily? Okay.
So two things I want to be clear on. One is we have, I believe, a year to make a decision on the special use permit.
I'm unsure what it is for the board.
It's a year from the application period, I think.
Okay.
So we're probably looking at 10 months from now. Okay. So in a scenario that we go through a comp plan and we do a rezoning, when a rezoning is done, would there be an opportunity for residents who were denied something under a previous zoning to apply for whatever opportunities might be available under a new zone? Or is that a question for our?
That would be a good question for him.
Or not county attorney.
Yeah, he's not going to help you too much.
Right, sorry.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I can't speak with 100% certainty on that. I would think so, but again, I would really need to defer.
But if we were to deny this, and if there was not a change to the zoning, then
Then they would need to wait a year before they.
They would have to wait a year.
but they could reapply
And
after a year.
A year from
Okay.
today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you.
It also wouldn't prevent them from applying for other special use permits or rezoning.
Right, okay.
Before Emily sits down, does anybody have any questions for Emily? Okay, well, if we could have the applicants come back. And we'll just give you a few minutes to respond and if
Yes,
we have any
again, my
questions.
name's Gretchen, 2617 Rockfish. Just a couple of comments. One, we're only renting it approximately 20% to 40% of the time per month. I'm living in the home at that time. So I think that makes it different than if it was 100% business. The other point, and I did a little bit of research on this because at the Planning Commission, about if the special use permit travels with the next, if we decide to leave. And in the first paragraph of the criteria, there's a line in there that says that you all have the power to write the special use permit to tweak it a little bit. So I didn't know, do you know what I'm talking about? That first paragraph of it. anyway, it seems
Address
like,
this for now.
it just seems like there's a way you could write it, because that was the concern of our neighbors, that if we left, that the special use permit was written in such a way that it would only follow us. I think it's a legitimate, request from our neighbors, and it, the way I read it several times, I think there's merit in that request. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Emily or the applicants? All right. Who wants to start talking first?
Oh, I do. Because I, on the planning commission too, and when the planning commission vote came up after all the discussion, I actually voted against this. But, you know, I'm only gonna speak for myself, but first I'll speak for the board, which is, I think I can do, because even though we didn't really set out a plan, we kind of decided, I think, not to act on regulating short-term rentals beyond what we have already put into place, because we were in the process of the comprehensive plan, and that would give us an opportunity to utilize the public as a primary voice for what it is we should be doing and where in the county. So, and how we should do that. And you know, we've had focus groups and met and done all those kind of things, but that's the timing piece that you're all too painfully aware of in terms of this application. So from my standpoint, you know, it's important to be equitable and it's important to be thoughtful. I think that kind of goes without saying. That's what we're supposed to be doing here. But, you know, looking at this and looking at the neighborhood, I think that there are a few things that come to my mind that I didn't really, you know, bring up in the planning commission. One of them is that in our research that we've done on regulating short-term rentals, some of the options that are out there that other communities are implementing and have implemented have to do with R1 zonings. And some proposals have been adopted to not allow any short-term rentals where there's R1 zonings. There have been proposals that have been adopted and proposed to have only owner-occupied short-term rentals in R1 zonings. And so those are two things that would probably be on the table for us. However, looking at the Nelly's Ford area here and the neighborhood where this is located, it's pretty clear that, as the applicant stated, that there are other short-term rentals in the area. And if we were looking to implement some zoning in the Nelly's Ford community, it certainly would not look like it looks now. It would be cleaned up to some extent. How it would be cleaned up, whether it would be more highly regulated, whether some things would be not allowed and not necessarily grandfathered, and whether, or whether, or whether it would be more similar than different. We just kind of don't know where we're going to end up. It's good to know that whatever happens tonight, there will be other opportunities to address this in one way, shape, or form, whether it be at the time we come up with other zoning, or a year down the line when you'd have a second shot if you don't get it accepted tonight. I don't feel like I can approve a special use permit at this point where there's an R1 zone. And only because I think while it might not be the most equitable thing for the applicants, it seems like from a community standpoint, that it would not be a good idea to open a door that we want to slam later. And while slamming a door that we might want to open later might be more appropriate, I'm not sure about that. I have to be really sensitive, as Mr. Martin would say, to be responsive to the people who have put me here. And that means being sensitive to the people in my community who, you know, have had it way over their heads with short-term rentals in Nelson County. And without having to go through the reasons for and the reasons against, which of course we don't need to do at this point, I would love to see one color across the board. And, you know, if the community should, should recommend to us that we continue to allow short-term rentals in the Nelliesford community, then that makes our job a whole lot easier. If they should say no, that would make our job a whole lot easier as well. But we're in the middle. You know, we're stuck in this, you know, split zoning, pre-comp plan, pre-change in zoning, netherland, you know. And I would hope that, I hope that what we end up doing is the right thing. It's kind of hard to know at this point.
Anyone else? Martin?
Well, sometimes it's, best thing to do is put yourself in the position of already being here, you know? And I just think we need to stop this trend. Sorry.
Anything to add, Ms. Park? I'll echo a few things. This was, of course, as Mr. Reed had indicated, not an official rule, but when we came down to figuring out the zoning for short-term rentals, how we went about it, there was 1,000 ideas that were bounced around. And there was a moratorium that's an idea. There was blanket banning of special use permits, and a lot of those things we found out you just really can't do, and or it's not given the discretion as us as a government. When we look at R1 areas, this has been echoed in prior meetings, we don't have a lot. We really don't have a lot of R1. And currently, short-term rentals are a by right, and probably if you were to look at it geographically in square miles, 95% of Nelson County. And we understand the benefits of short-term rentals to our community. It definitely has increased, a lot of revenue in the last 3 years as we figure out enforcement a little bit more deeply. And as Mr. Reed has just indicated, we don't really know what zoning is going to look like until we get past the comprehensive plan, which will be ambitiously done hopefully next year. I for one, echo the sentiment of I would like to see us get through our at least comp plan and our rezoning. And if that means we just delay the vote, if that means we just outright deny, I think one thing that was just mentioned, if we deny it, you'd have a year from the state to reapply. If we wait, let's just say we say, all right, we're going to wait 9 months, which whatever that would put it out, maybe we revisit that. We'd probably be in the middle of zoning anyway. I very much doubt R1 will ever be in the picture of short-term rentals in the future, if I were to speculate. That's just my speculations. But as Mr. Reed has indicated, that area is a unique situation. It has a lot of mixed uses all over the place. You got a restaurant, you got a bunch of restaurants, minus margaritas apparently tonight. And I feel for you, because right across the street, you can have one by right. So, I would encourage the board, whether that's a delayed vote or, if we just outright say no and encourage them to come back as soon as the zoning's done, that would be my two suggestions.
You gave two suggestions.
I did.
So what?
My suggestion is either we vote no and the applicant comes back in a year, or we delay the vote, 6 months or so, because I think it's a year from the application, and we'll make sure we're not breaking any laws. If we did do that, we'd call you. That would be my two suggestions.
My question would be for Emily, because it's obvious in this situation, you don't have the votes. It's not, it doesn't look like it's gonna happen. Like, which scenario is better for the applicant if they want to come back down the road? Is one better than the other? Pull the application, or we vote no and they bring it back a year or whatever? What is the,
Yeah, they could voluntarily pull it, and then when the zoning's over, they could just, that'd be a little interesting, especially since we're sitting right here. I don't think that would be tasteful. I think that'd be not great, right?
so then it becomes delay the vote or?
Yeah, delay the vote or vote no now and tell them come back in exactly 12 months.
I'm not sure about the delaying of the vote. That's an interesting one. As far as denying it, like if we are looking at potentially changing the zoning of that area, like you said, I believe that would nix the 1 year situation. And if we're not looking at ever allowing vacation homes in R1, then if they were to come back in a year and it was still R1 and it hadn't been rezoned to something else, I believe that the vote would still be no.
I've just got to say that given the mixed uses that are already there, the likelihood that R1 would continue to exist there is probably pretty slim.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
thinking.
Pretty
And so,
slim.
yeah, and so if it changes, that 1
Yeah.
year thing isn't going to come into play.
I don't
I
know.
honestly feel like going ahead with the vote is probably a better.
Yeah,
idea
it's
than
most
just
the cleanest way.
6 months
Yeah,
deferment.
if we put it off, then if the 8 months passes and we don't take action, that's the same as a denial, and then they have to wait.
And then they have to wait another year,
Yeah.
very good point.
Yeah. I suggest if we're going to make a motion, just make a motion to deny. And I strongly encourage the applicants to probably bring this application up as soon as this is over with. Up to the board. Unless someone's got a better idea.
No, and I do sympathize with the situation. The timing is bad. I'm familiar with the property, what you all are doing there seems to be fine. It doesn't seem that it has been a problem in the neighborhood, but we have got, at some point, we have to start saying we're too close to the zoning changes and getting the comp plan done. And for me, if this had been a year ago, I would probably vote against it. Tonight, I'm like, I'm waiting. We're just waiting for this thing done. So-
I'm willing to make the motion to deny because I think it's best for our community. Put a halt to this. We're still a community and we don't want to be just merely a vacation destiny. So
All right, that's-
it's not personal, but I feel strongly.
All right, so we got a motion. We have a second.
I'll second.
Second for Mr. Reed. Any further discussion? You have something, Candy?
I was just gonna potentially ask Emily about the possibility of applying for rezoning for this particular property if this SUP is denied.
Yeah, so we would be able to apply for a rezoning. That was an option that the applicants were already looking at, was either apply for a rezoning to A1 or a special permit for the vacation home. They still could potentially apply for a rezoning. to
Okay.
A1.
All right, so a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote.
Mr. Barton?
No.
What?
Well, yes. Which way?
Oh, my God. You made the
I
motion.
want to deny the motion.
You want to vote yes to your motion.
Oh, yes.
That's good for us, right?
No, that's, no.
Double negative equals positive.
I'm good. I've been confused most of my life.
Mr. Parr voted yes.
What do I vote?
You voted yes, you're fine.
Okay.
Mr. Reed? Yes. What was I? Thank you, guys. All right, I'm reminded of Harry Reid when he pushed through the Affordable Care Act and he voted against his very own thing. The House actually had to go back and redo the vote because the guy championed it and he voted wrong. All right, moving on to budget option and appropriation resolutions. This doesn't have anything to do with the schools, right? This is the normal, that's what I thought. So we normally do this. All right, correction of FY '24 budget option appropriation resolutions R 2023-40C. Candy. Which one's complicated? There's a lot. Was there a comma missing or?
Okay, as Mr. Rutherford mentioned, this was a public hearing on some proposed corrections to our FY '24 budget adoption and appropriation resolutions. The original resolutions are R 2023-40 and R 2023-41. So our Virginia State Code Authority that this is based upon is 15.2-2503 and 15.2-2506. And these prescribe the parameters for which approvals of budgets happen and also publications of notice and public hearings on the budget. So a little bit of background that you all may be a little familiar with. On June 13, 2023, Nelson County Board of Supervisors approved resolutions for the FY '24 budget adoption and also the appropriation of funds. The total FY '24 budgeted amount was shown as $93,052,486 in both resolutions. During the annual FY '23 year end and subsequent FY '24 beginning year financial processes that occurred in August of '23, our staff discovered a clerical error in the general fund total as was presented in the aforementioned resolutions, which affected the overall adopted and appropriated budgets for FY '24. The correct FY '24 budget adoption and appropriation totals should be $95,163,565, which includes the VPA fund, which is the transfer to social services amount, of $2,111,079. That amount was omitted from this total in the original resolution. And staff consulted with the county attorney and our auditors on how to effect this correction. They recommended that staff follow initial budget adoption and appropriation procedures in accordance with 15.2-2506 of the Code of Virginia, which requires a public hearing following a 7-day notice. So pursuant to 15.2-2506, the board authorized a public hearing on September 13th via adoption of resolution 2023-61. Our public hearing notice was published in the September 28th, 2023 edition of the Nelson County Times, providing 13-day notice prior to the board's public hearing tonight. So this represents our original FY '24 budget adoption resolution. As you can see, the blue total of $93,052,486 was in the original resolution, and our original general fund amount was $48,111,255. So what we are proposing is a correction to this resolution that shows the total of $95,163,565 and a general fund budget amount of $50,222,334. And that number now includes the number below it, that BPA $2,111,079 amount. This represents our original FY '24 budget appropriation resolution, showing the general fund having revenues of all sources of $48,111,255, the same amount shown for expenditures for all departments, and a total for each of $93,052,486. Our corrected resolution would show the correct amount for the general fund revenues, all sources, and expenditures for the $50,222,334. And then a revised total of the $95,163,565. So next steps would be to conduct the public hearings, receive citizen input on the proposed corrected resolutions, obtain input from staff if desired, and then pursuant to our code section that we have to adhere to, there's a minimum 7-day waiting period between this public hearing and when the board can take action on the proposed corrected resolutions, 2023-40C and 2023-41C. So we would recommend favorable consideration of these resolutions at the next regular board meeting scheduled for November 16th.
November.
Happy to take any questions.
So we're just gonna do a public hearing and then we vote on this in next meeting.
Correct, you have to wait a minimum of 7 days.
Okay, we'll just vote. All right. Any questions for Candy before we go to the public hearing?
I have a question,
Sure.
and I know there's a simple answer to it. Hopefully. So if we take the 2 million plus and add it to the general fund, then why does the VPA continue to have a $2 million balance?
Primarily because accounting wise, it has to be included within the general fund total and then as a transfer out.
Oh, now I see. Thank you.
Yes. So the 2 million is actually not really being added, it's already there. It just was not shown in the total general fund amount like it should have been. Human error.
So this isn't coming out of your salary.
Hopefully not.
All right. Any other questions for Candy before we go to the public hearing? Hearing none, we're going to go to the public hearing. I now open the public hearing for correction of FY24 budget adoption appropriation resolutions R 2023-40C and R 2023-41C. Open it up. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to public comments for budget adoption appropriation resolutions, as I just said? Hearing none, we will now close the public comment section. It's always fun when we got like a $80 million number there and nobody shows up. Anyways, moving on to the board. Do we want to vote to send it? Do we have to vote or does this just automatically go to next
Yeah,
month?
it will automatically go to the next meeting on the 16th.
All right, if we have nothing else, are we good to go? We're good to go. This is going to the next meeting.
Yes.
Moving on to amendment FY 2023-2024, supplemental appropriation of school construction assistance program grant funds.
Okay. Okay, as Mr. Rutherford noted, this is a public hearing on a budget amendment for our school appropriation. The background on this is on March 28, 23, the Board of Supervisors voted to provide a letter of financial commitment for the school division's school construction assistance program grant application for high school renovations estimated to cost $24,517,030. School division was awarded a 10% grant of $2,451,703 by the Department of Education Board on May 11th, 23. An official notification was dated June 21st, 2023. These funds are expected to be, these funds are actually going to be provided on a reimbursement basis and not to be received in a lump sum from the state. So the Code of Virginia provides for the amendments of budgets. and 15.22507 states that any such amendment which exceeds 1% of the total expenditures shown in the currently adopted budget must be accomplished by publishing a notice of a meeting and a public hearing once in a newspaper having general circulation in that locality at least 7 days prior to the meeting date. So on September 13th, 2023, Board of Supervisors authorized a public hearing pursuant to this state code section, the adoption of Resolution 2023-62. The budget amendment public hearing notice published in September 28, 23 edition of the Nelson County Times provides 13 days notice prior to the board's public hearing date tonight. Total expenditure shown in the currently adopted budget is $72,061,949.14. This excludes transfers. 1% of that total is $720,619.49. And the total budget amendment request is $2.4 million in state school construction assistance program grant funds requested by the school division for the high school renovation project. So the total school budget after amendment would be increased by this $2.4 million. And that would be on a reimbursement basis. So the state funds will be provided directly to the school division as the grant recipient. Therefore, no transfer of funds from the general fund is required. Proposed budget amendment entails a supplemental appropriation within the school fund as follows. The amount of $2,451,703 would be appropriated to this particular revenue account and expenditure account within the school fund. So this presentation just addresses the technical aspects of appropriating these funds. So our next steps would be to conduct a public hearing, obtain input from school division staff if desired, and yes, Dr. Hester and Assistant Superintendent Irvin are here. And then consider adoption of Resolution 2023-65, which would amend the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget. So the staff recommends favorable consideration of the budget amendment. And
All right, any questions for staff before we go to public hearing?
I have a question. Because this is on a reimbursement basis, when can the reimbursement be applied for? Can it be applied as soon as monies are spent, or do they have to wait until the entire amount has been?
my understanding is that it's applied for as it is spent and submitted on a quarterly basis to the Department of Education for analysis and reimbursement.
So in other words, if for the first, say, $500,000 that gets spent on this project, they could then apply for full reimbursement at that point?
They would apply for the amount of the eligible expenditures at that time.
We'll ask them to come up here.
Okay.
I just don't want to say anything wrong. I think that's correct.
Any other questions before we go to public hearing? Okay, none. Let's go to the public hearing. I now open the public hearing for amendment of FY 2023-2024 budget supplemental appropriation of school construction assistance program grant funds, R 2023-65. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak to this? David, state your name and address for the record.
Again, my name is Dave McGann, 1032 Crossing View Road, Athens, Virginia. I just looking at the $24 million that we got to spend on it, and we're going to get a grant of $2 million to be reimbursed. That's what I heard. Is there anything else that the state is going to reimburse us if we spend $24 million? That's all they're going to give us? And we can't get no other grant from them after we spent $22 million, and that's all we're gonna get out of the state is $2 million. That was my concern on the board, of who's over top of trying to get more money from the state for the education. When there's lottery and there's $1 billion just sold a ticket, you know? I'm just concerned on, the county spending that much money on the education that the state should have more funding for us. other than $2 million, if you want to spend 22 million, just to remodel the school. That's just my concern. I ain't got nothing against the school being redone, because it really surely needs it. I'm just worried about, why we couldn't get more money from them. To help us save more than $2 million when we gonna spend 22 million. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else wish to speak? Paul's all that's it. All right. We're now gonna close the public comment section of this agenda. Let's ask the school staff to come forward real quick. How are y'all doing? Wonderful.
I would like to respond to this particular grant
Please
based on the,
address the board.
based on the criteria that the state had set, with Nelson County demographics and our composite index, the most that we could get was 10% of the project. We got everything that we were able to get out of this particular program. There are some other grants that we certainly are pursuing, especially in the neighborhood of security and looking at the school security grants. We're applying for a COPS grant. There was another grant that allows for funding for cameras and surveillance. And so as things are made available to us so that we know about them, we certainly will pursue every avenue that we can to help the taxpayer and the board of supervisors from the school. Rest assured that we are looking to.
Just to add to that, this set of grants, there's a new set of grants, of competitive grants coming around, and if we could be applying for those as well, we would be. But since we were the final approved application of this round of competitive grants, we're not eligible to get this next round. But every time something comes around, we try to apply for it, because we do want to be able to support and find other creative financial ways to be able to provide for the things that we believe our students and our staff need in order to be successful. So we do understand, many of these grants are based off of the LCI or the ability local. And we all know that here in Nelson, we are kind of a tale of two counties, and that LCI doesn't always appropriately reflect what the actual spending ability is. So we recognize that. We look for other opportunities to be able to provide other funding avenues to support this, to alleviate some of that pressure and weight to provide on behalf of you all and the taxpaying citizens.
We do anticipate that the first dollars that we spend would be the state money, so that we could get those monies turned. We don't anticipate that there would be any county funding this fiscal year at all. We think that this grant will, there'll be time taken to, for architectural engineering. And then there's some identified projects that we're gonna have to go out for bid and award before November the 11th is our magic date. So we have interviewed architects. We've agreed on the architect that we will have working on the project. We are in contract negotiations from our attorney to them. So we're just waiting for the final contract from them to sign.
And they're fully aware of the timelines and the expedited nature of it in order to get those funds. And the November 11th date is specific to the grant funds, not the overall allocation of the $24.5 million. It's specific to the grant funds.
Sorry. I'm certainly not meaning to be contradictory at all, but it looks like you have 6 months from the date of the letter, which was June 21st. So we actually have a little more time.
Right.
So it's that
The letter was from the date of the board meeting.
This says,
So what we will also do is reach out and verify that, but that
Yeah.
is what our understanding was November
at the
11th.
time, yeah.
Verify that.
Yeah, if you don't mind, just because this says, of the grant award funds within 6 months of the date of this letter. Yeah,
we'll-
definitely, yeah, so you might have one more time.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Any little bit else.
30 days goes a long ways.
And we're happy to do that.
Any questions for school staff?
You have a 24, somewhere around $24 million proposed to redo the high school. Is there a timeline for that spending that has to be done?
They gave us a Gantt chart that basically outlined what it could look like, but it hasn't been finalized. And it will depend on the scope. They are out investigating the nooks and crannies of the high school. And so they haven't finally defined the scope of the project yet to be able to.
Who is they?
The architect.
Those are the architects.
I'm talking about the state. Has the state determined a timeframe for when we have to do this?
The $2 million project has to be reimbursed on a reimbursement basis, January, April, July, and October. So next October, they hope to have reimbursed the whole $2,451,703.
So when are you going to come to the board and ask for the money for this project?
That's what the public hearing would be doing, is appropriating those funds to the board and the state.
It's not appropriating 24 million, it's.
No.
$2,451,703.
When will you be coming to the board to ask for 24 million approximately to renovate the high school?
We will be basing our request on the Gantt chart that is designed by the architects, where they basically chart out the project over a number of years. So part of it will be next year, and part of it will be the year after. But until they finalize the scope and figure out what comes first and how much each section costs, I can't give you an estimate on what that would be.
I'm going to be frank, okay? When you first came, when I first came to this board, one of the most, education was my primary thing that I was thinking about, as you know. And but I feel that, you know, the primary thing in education has to do not with bricks and mortar, but with people, you know, and forgive me, you know, I've had a stroke, but I'm struggling with what I want to say to you, and I want to say it to you properly, and I want to say it properly. I did not have the impression, I know that other board members did not have the impression when we approved this grant or the money to pursue this grant, or just the recognition of going after the grant, that this was going to happen right away. That was a surprise to me and to many people. Now, I'll go back to the other thing. You know, I don't think we're in a financial position now as a county to allot this $24 million to the renovation of the schools. So I have, some of my questions have to do with this. Can we get out of this?
Well, I guess I'm a little confused about when we met in October, about a year ago. We had a joint meeting, and we took you guys on a tour of the high school to point out the items that we are a great concern about that goes directly to what you just phrased, like we're in the business of education, and these are items that impact the education of our students. Whether it's the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, all of that impacts their ability. And so the whole reason, the whole purpose that we wanted to show you is this is something that is of an immediate concern to us. And so when we can't control when the BDOE provides grants. We can't control that. So these grants are coming around we apply for that because we want to be able to support the funding structures, but we showed you what we were concerned about. So we put that, and this has been a conversation that has been a part between the two boards.
I looked
For
at
a few
that and I
years.
was there
Yeah,
and I
sure.
saw it. And I thought that what was suggested was overblown. It wasn't as necessary. I know that the answer to everything in education these days is technology, and we have a 1950s building and we're expected to have 2020 education. I think that's nonsense. I think there are needs, of course, technological needs to do things that are to benefit our students. But it's not, this board, I've been here 45 years. This board has been always really friendly in terms of bricks and mortar and capital investment. It has always failed to provide the kind of funding that was needed for education. Had to do with salaries and had to do with programs and et cetera. And I just feel that, you know, that the redoing of the high school at this time does not have to be done in this huge context. You know, I mean, you know, I'm a friend of the schools. You know, it's the most important thing we do for the people of Nelson County is provide education. But that doesn't always include buildings, you know? There's other things that are important. There are other things that are important for this community. And I really felt that when it was presented to us, the idea that this was a long-term thing you were thinking of. I mean, there were short-term needs, the roof and, you know, the other stuff with the foundations and all that stuff. Yes, you need that money right away. But honestly, and it hurts me to say this, I think there are other ways we could spend the money in this county other than immediately redoing the high school.
Well, I don't think it's an overall, it is a partial renovation. And so when we say technology, that would be a smaller portion of this. We're talking about, we have a building that operates off of one water main. And so the high school water main feeds the middle school. So when something goes wrong with one, it goes wrong with both. It's aging. We have HVAC units that are aging. We have lighting that is not, it's in an older portion of the building. So we're looking at like the true MEP part of it, not, hey, let's get the flashes, most technology-driven aspects. We are looking at the things that our children deserve to be able to have in their learning spaces. And we're fixing the roof. We're working on those things.
But I've heard from other members of the board that the $24 million is not going to be enough. There's going to be a need for more than that.
Enough for what?
To do things you propose to do.
And that's what we're working with Mosley to be able to identify those things that we can do with that amount of money. The best use that, if that's been a part of the conversation for the last, even prior for me being here. So that's why we're working with the group to be able to identify those needs, that we can use this money to best use, and it's not flash, it's what that building needs. For that portion of the building, it's not, you know, there's a lot of things going into looking at this project to use the most and get the most out of that money.
We interviewed the architects when they looked at our budget and they looked at the preliminarily looking at the high school, especially the plumbing. Some of it is 1954 building, and we've got a 70s building, and we've got a 2003 building, you know.
Yeah.
You know,
I've been here.
It's plumbing and it's electrical. I mean, it's not flash and, you know, I think we're disappointed when we think that most of that budget we won't even see because it's gonna be under the building or over the ceilings. So. And again, it's not flash.
It isn't. It is truly what those students deserve and need in order to be able to compete and to be able to, it isn't to be able to, you know, the technological aspect, that is not the focus of this money.
I don't mean to question what you're arguing. I mean to say that they're in providing the best possible education and environment for children. Bricks and mortar are never the answer. And it seems to be always in this community, which I've lived in for a long time, that when the board comes to the Board of Supervisors and asks for money, it's always for buildings. When I see so many other needs. And I just want to encourage you to find ways to get by with what we have until we can afford.
And I'm afraid that's what we've been trying to do for 20, 30 years. We have aging equipment. And so when we say brick and mortar, there's also the operations, there's the HVAC units, it's hard to learn when it's a 7-degree day in January and the heat is pumping and it's hot. Like, we have some aging units that aren't operating efficiently or correctly because we've kept putting some things off. And we are now at that point where if we don't fix these things, that next fix could be more costly. And it's just gonna get bigger and bigger. And so that's what, we're now getting to that precipice of what we need to do in order to serve our students. And it isn't, again, you saw it, when your walls are peeling apart, when that brick and mortar is not, the envelope is not what it should be.
I did not see that.
Part of that tour.
I was on that tour and I saw there were individual places where there was problems. But overall, it looked to me.
There are a number of issues, the outside envelope where water's gotten behind the brick and the brick has.
Well, I know that, but that money's been appropriated,
Right, so
hasn't
that's
it?
part of it. No, that
No.
hasn't been appropriated.
That's a part of
this
this.
project. So we've got that part. There are only 2 wall receptacles in each classroom. And I know that technology isn't the answer, but it is a learning device that every child in Nelson County has, and it's how instruction is carried on now. And so we have to be able to charge them. Kids have to be able to plug in. And with 2 outlets, it's hard because you already have a communication board, you have a projector, the teacher has a laptop or a computer. It's just different.
And that's just one part of it. We're also talking about the pipes. We're talking about a lot of other things that go into this that isn't just.
And so the rooftop units, all of those would be replaced at the high school. They were done in, I guess, 2003 or 2002 as we were building the middle school. So, they're 20-some years old. Very few heat pumps make it 20 years these days.
Okay.
I wish it were flash that we could say, we don't need to do that. But these are things that you're going to have to do. If you don't do it now, you're going to have to do them very shortly.
And more expensive.
Right, and you might, end up having to close school because we're dealing with emergency situations and not being proactive. I mean, Les could bring in some pieces of pipe for plumbing.
Mr. Reed?
The only thing I wanted to add to this is that, back in March, we provided a letter supporting the $24.5 million price tag for renovation. And I'm sympathetic, and I agree with Mr. Barton with everything that he said, including, the questions that he raised. It would be really disingenuous of us to decide at the 11th hour that we didn't want to do that. And the commitment that we have given you, I think, for that $24.5 million renovation, in the hopes that we can keep it as close to that number as possible, is genuine.
Mr. Parr? I think part of the sentiment that I've had discussion with staff and kind of where we are. March 28th, of course, we did, the interest in trying to do major, capital improvements in the schools. That certainly was the ambition of the board, still is. I think one of the scenarios that has adjusted since then is our financial power and how we're able to procure debt. We're not going to be able to stroke a check of 24 million minus the 2.4, 22 million. We have to procure debt at that. And I can ask staff, but interest rates have still risen for us, right?
I don't know that for sure, but I was
Speculating.
So.
Yes.
And we will be getting an update on our debt capacity sometime in the near future.
And that's part of the discussion that we have with ourselves is how much can we procure? How much debt is going to be available to us? 22 mil is a lot. And I'm hesitant to think that 22 mil is going to do what we think, because as we've learned in any capital project, and you've learned on the roof too, 2 million was not enough. I mean, how much is the roof project at now?
I'm not sure where you're.
What I'm alluding to is the idea that every month that's gone by, the cost of capital improvements has gone up astronomically. Cost of construction, generally speaking, in the last 4 years has gone up 40%. And we're not going to see that number go down. When we went after the DSS building, I think that was originally budgeted, was it 3 million? I'm trying to remember what it was, 3 or 4 million, and turned out to be $12 million. So we were off by 300%. My concern is if we get started on a project of this scale, we begin, you can't stop, you have to finish. And that's one of the, not necessarily curses of capital improvements, but it is one of the costs. You begin, you find it's not just one mechanical issue, it's 10. And then that cost of 22 million really turns into 32 million. At that point, we're at 22-ish million, we would be absorbing, at that time, it would have been about 25-30% of our debt capacity, I think, with reasonable knowledge at that time. Now at this time it's broaching 50%. We're looking at tax hikes. We're also going into, if we start procuring this, we have other major needs. Piney River, we have major improvements that need to happen there. We have infrastructure in Livingston that has come up as well. And these things have all piled on into the millions and millions and millions of dollars. And I'm not saying that we didn't have the foresight, but what we didn't have the foresight was being so incorrect on how much we were estimating for dollars and cents. And I think that's probably where my concern is in this past year and a half, how off we've been on all our capital projects. And I'm concerned if we get started on this, it's not going to be a $22 million thing. It's going to be a 35. It's going to be a 30. And it's my understanding that we're not really looking to do a set thing. We're looking to do, or not set thing, a set number of tasks and improvements. We're looking to figure out what improvements we can make with $22 million. Is that correct? So we working with the number, or are we working with the tasks?
We don't have the ability, we're dependent on you, and we're dependent on the state, we're dependent on the federal government for funding. So we have to look at it as, this is what our budget is.
Yeah.
What can we do for our budget?
And I think and I'm sure if we sat down and we wrote a budget in March of 28 of what we could do and look at it in March of 24, we'd probably be off by 20% of our expectations in that March.
And I think if people who have been involved in that type of thing understand that. And I think the organization with whom we're working with is factoring that into, without anybody having a magic ball, a crystal ball. We don't. But the organization with whom we're working with is factoring in some of those aspects, because this is what they do. They do this on a consistent basis. They're working through things.
Right.
And I guess I feel confused, because I felt like if we're going to go so far as to have a joint meeting and take you on a walkabout and point these things out, it's because we're genuine about what our concerns are. And we're trying to be as upfront and transparent with you all as possible. Like, these are the concerns that we have. So that's where I'm kind of like, wow, I'm about as transparent as I can get if we say this is what we're needing. And then we're having conversations between boards about totals of money. And we come to you saying, this is a grant that we have an opportunity to get. To me, that's pretty forthright, saying, this is something we're interested in doing. We're applying for a grant based off this amount of money. Now, certainly understand 24 million like tomorrow. We understand that. We're not planning that for tomorrow. We're planning over a course of time. We understand that. So I think I'm concerned that now we're at a point where there's a conversation of pulling back and taking that away after you guys have had that conversation approving it. But I think moving forward, that there needs to be that conversation about, my job is to make sure that we're spending the money that we have. And if there's a conversation that, you guys are saying, we'll back that 24 million, that if you can't do it, then we need to know that, because we're being told we'll back it on this, but now we're being told you can't. And so if there's knowledge of that, we can plan around that. We can then not move forward on things. And I think there wasn't that awareness on our half once we got that letter. So I think that that's a conversation we're really going to need to have as we plan, as she said, the Gantt chart out, not to have this finished overall by next summer. It will be over the course of time to be able to do this.
Yep.
And if you choose not to move forward, you'd be forfeiting this grant, but you're still gonna have that work to do. You're still gonna have to replace the plumbing, you're still gonna have to replace the air conditioning unit. You've got an elevator that almost caught fire and burnt the school down here a while back. I mean, the facility is aging. It just needs refurbishment. And it will cost you $2.5 million more just by not having the grant to help support you.
Which is why we wanted to do this now, because we know costs will go up. We want to be able to take care of this with the money that we have, because we don't want the cost to go up.
Sure.
We understand.
I think the problem is we've had costs go up on everything we've touched.
The forthrightness between the boards has been, so much better. I certainly don't want to disrupt that. I can remember, the best time in Nelson County is the high school graduation, when all the different people from all the different parts, and this is a very diverse place, are there. And I can remember a girl who I thought didn't like school was staying there crying in the middle of the football field. I said, "What's the matter?" She said, "I love this place." The people of Nelson County love Nelson County. And I, education to me is, so important. Without public schools, my parents, I don't know what would happen to me, my daughter. And public schools are being challenged. The last thing I want to do is make things more difficult for you. I don't want to do that.
I think.
But I did not understand when you came here and asked for that grant that it was immediate. That was, I don't think you did that on purpose or anything, but that's how I reacted to it,
Sure, and I think that's over the course, it's been 15 months we've been working together. So there's a relationship building and getting that communication lines. And so I understand that. I thought I was very obvious about what we're asking for and what we're doing. So it's learning each other and understanding that we're going to be as honest with you guys as we can possibly be, and tell you exactly what we need, and be able to acknowledge what we're asking for in this is to do right by our students, because we love Nelson and we love our students. We're not asking to build a new wing. We're not asking to build on an auditorium. We're not asking for that. We're asking for this money to build and maintain it in the proper structure to be able to carry on for the next 20, 30 years. We're at that point. We haven't done that. And I think people think back, we just renovated. It was 20 some years ago. But it goes by in the blink of an eye. And we think we're remembering something, thinking it's more recent than it was. And things don't last forever. And that's what we want to be able to take care of, so we can continue to provide the best learning environment for our students.
I'm not sure what the consensus of the board is, but I do believe it would be advantageous to, if we have to vote today, if there's an opportunity to delay the vote.
So just out of transparency, I think we'll lose the grant. And there is a current call for more grants. If we apply for that, I'm not sure how serious the DOE would take us on that, since we backed out of this one. I'm concerned about having that additional 10% being provided to us. And we feel like that's, 10% of the $24.5 million, that's pretty, I don't know about you, but that's pretty big. It's not the $1.72 billion lottery for tonight, or tomorrow next, but it's pretty significant. So I am very concerned about that and being able to be able to find another grant like this to be able to support.
So you all couldn't wait 30 days?
Well, one thing that we said to Ms. McGarry is let's find out about what that, so 30 days would take us to almost, that would be November 9th.
Ish.
Yeah. What I'm worried about is if November 11th is the deadline date for approving, from the approval of the application for getting a contract. So if it's November 11th, then yeah, we'll lose it. If it's November, or if it's December 12th, so we're also working with an organization where we're working through contracts and negotiations, so we would be backing down off of some of that, so we would have to work through that with them. After having something that we thought was approved, so, a little concerned about that one as well. But I think, I need to check on that date, which might give us a little bit of wiggle room.
Sure.
Before I say, well, absolutely not, or yes, we can. I want to check on that.
I think it's always a good practice, and though we have to always do our due diligence as governments and entities, if you run a business or a household, making proactive steps. The state requires we do a public hearing whenever we do something major like this. So that infers that continued discussion and continued inquiry will happen. Obviously boards can change in 6 months. It's likely we'll have new member coming in this next round. So how we work around that and how do we govern around that? It's a constant. It is my suggestion that we delay, and if we get knowledge that it's less than that date, that we could potentially call for a special meeting with a 4-day notice, right, Candy?
Correct.
So I am not against doing something of that nature, just so that would give you all time to procure any further information that the rest of this board may want.
Mr. Chairman, I totally disagree with that.
You-
I think that our letter that we voted to support on March 28th spoke to our commitment to support the work of the school up to $24.5 million. I don't see any reason, unless other members of the board are considering reneging and reformulating our commitment to the schools that we gave them in March. I would absolutely not be in favor of that. But if that's what you're inferring that is a possibility here, I would like to say that when we make a commitment to the schools, and especially put a price tag on it, and the schools have been very upfront about their presentation about what that's for, and we've been very upfront about our support for it, that unless there is a very dire circumstance that we're responding to, and I don't sense one here, that we should be held to those decisions that we've made.
Well, Mr. Parr, I think us having the ability to call a special meeting as we get this info is advantageous for both the board and the school. I don't think there's any issues with that in my mind. At least that's where my head's at, and I don't know where the rest is. Hey, mister, we can't interact with the public. I appreciate it though.
I really don't see what a delay would do. I mean, I want a lot of things. That's my dilemma. I mean, I understand what you're saying from your perspective. But my ambitions are ridiculously high in terms of what I think education can deliver. And the importance to our community. But if you're gonna sit here and tell me that these things are essential, I have no reason not to believe you. I mean, I was taken by surprise. I was probably irked by the fact that I didn't understand what was going on. And, you know, I have to agree with Ernie. I mean, we might as well just do it. We're gonna do it anyway. Yeah, we're gonna do it anyway. Yeah, I mean, unless these people are lying to us, and I don't think that's what's happening. You know,
You're a funny guy.
I'm a funny guy because, you know, I mean, all those things, you know,
We interviewed a number of architects when we went out and submitted our RFP, and one of them was the one that, actually one of the founders was the one who the county has done a lot of work with. And they seconded everything that the architect that was actually chosen did, and actually theirs was even more dire than what the architect that was chosen in terms of the current conditions of the high school. But they don't see, what, it mirrors the presentation that Gary Harvey presented to the board when Steve Carter was there, and that's what the budget was based on. So again, that's old dollars then. And so we know what conditions were done. And so when we applied for the grant, you know, we knew that the project total was that Gary was estimated at that time was 24 and a half. And we looked at the grant as a way of getting 24 and a half million of work for 22 million. And this was funding $2.5 million of it. So we looked at it as a way to help the county to apply for the grant. And I'm sorry that you might look at it differently.
And I would say I don't think I have unreasonably high I think I have high expectations for our school system and our kids and our buildings. And so I'm with you in that I don't think it's outrageous to expect this. We have no reason to not be honest about what this need is. There's no reason, like, this is for our kids. This isn't for anything else, and so we're
yeah,
with you on
it's
that.
for our kids, but there are in education things far more important than
But when funds are
buildings.
connected to CIP type of projects, and these are construction funds, I couldn't get these construction funds to go pay for textbooks. I can't do that with these funds. And sooner or later, we're gonna have to do this. And it's in the best interest for us to honestly consider this right now while these interest loads are not gonna drop anytime soon, and these costs aren't gonna drop. And we have a grant to do it, and we don't know what our future will hold with other monies being able to be available that would then be granted to us. But we will be, and we'll continue to be as honest and upfront, and we will find a way to communicate in ways that urgency or that, hey, this is what we're talking about right now.
I don't remember any, I've been here 30 years, over 30 years. I don't remember any grant for construction that were free money to the county. Most of them were based on repayment with interest, like your school literary loans, they were based on your composite index. So with us being 0.5888, you were looking at a 5% interest rate. BPSA, you know, was a little different, but I've never seen free money. Like, we don't have to pay this back at all. It's just given to us. So I hate to turn it back and give back anything that's free. So I guess that's my dilemma. Basically,
The same thing is, you know, I don't want to do something just because you got money for it. That's not a good enough argument.
no, but the needs are there.
The
And this has
argument
been a part
that
of
the
the
needs are there are
Yes.
played
Oh,
with.
no, we're not just, this has been a part of a conversation, obviously, you guys with the architectural partners had drafted up different identified areas in a number. This has been a need for a few years, this isn't a new need.
All right, so let's go on ahead and get to motions. Now, I will say this, if it's a tied vote, what does that mean, Candy?
If it's a tie vote, then the motion fails.
So the motion fails and we'd be in the same situation. We'd need to, yeah. Okay. All right, board, what do you want to do? I still suggest we wait and call a special meeting over the next month. And I promise you I will. We will.
Well, I would, prefer that the motion failing, but are you gonna vote for it? Would you vote for the motion?
I would vote for over the 30 days so that we could get little bit more information.
Mr. Parr, would you vote?
What information?
The information I would like to know is what the cost of debt service is going to be for 20-some million dollars, what the actual scope of the project is going to look like as things have changed, and how much these, architects are generally expecting that this 22 million's going to go versus what we thought how far it was going to go in March. Those would be the expectations I would have to see what it is, because we have been consistently incorrect with our capital
If there's a
improvements.
necessity,
We had a
that's somewhat
necessity.
irrelevant.
Well, and I can understand that, but it is relevant to when we start then trying to figure out how we feel the taxpayers cut the dollars and cents later, which we're coming right up into a budget session as soon as this is over with.
So these estimates are also based off, we're currently speaking with these individuals, so it's not based off of a March estimate.
So it was $24 million the whole way around. We had no scope in March.
So we interviewed these individuals in July, I believe,
So how do we pick $24 million in March?
because between the two boards, that was a number that was
I didn't-
provided as well as what the projected.
We didn't pick $24 million.
Well,
We never
no,
would
no,
have.
no, hold on. In addition to what Mr. Harvey had estimated what that cost would be. So we're saying we have this money, right? What can we do with this money? And so we're working with a group saying, with this money over the course of time, this is what we think we can do with it. Not, hey, we have this one project in mind, whatever it's gonna cost, that's what we're gonna do. That's not what we're trying to do. We recognize we have a finite amount of money. We recognize
Sure.
that.
I think if we put things off, it's gonna turn into something else. And that we don't want it to turn.
And it is unfortunate we're 4 members tonight. I have to.
Well, but we've been pretty much that way for a while.
All right.
So what, Mr. Parr, would you vote? What would you vote? What do you think?
I think I'm prepared to vote, or I think it would probably be in the best interest to delay.
Well, I'm prepared to vote if it's going to pass. But pass?
If you got 2 people saying it would delay, that we need to delay it.
Well, that, I'm fearful that if we delay this, it'll turn into something else.
So
Other than making a judgment on what are the needs, what are our needs? I mean, it comes, the board believes that the school board believes these are our needs.
Did you just make a 180 on where you started the evening?
I came here with questions.
I know, but you've been way over here. I'm just asking.
You guys can sit down if you want. You don't have to.
How fast do you think you all might be able to get the information that they?
So it sounds like from our end, the answers that we need to get is it November 11th or December 11th, correct?
I think that is a huge part of it.
Okay.
But
I can't get the answer about debt services, that's not.
I understand that is within ours.
Yeah, so you need
And
that from us, right? So I would like to believe that a phone call tomorrow would be able to connect us with someone to get that ball rolling.
Our architects were prepared, what they're currently working on is only the 2,451,703. I don't know that they will be in a position that they could look at the $24 million project and have it.
They don't have to have exact specifics.
Definitive, yeah.
I mean, we've operated on that many times.
It hasn't been did yet.
Right.
Yeah, we haven't had any.
What they can accomplish.
And I would definitely suggest that when we have votes for 20-some million, that we definitely get those experts here with us, if possible. as we would have with the DSS building when we did our RFP and we got PMA and
But what I don't
Architectural
understand
partners.
is why that specific number has to do with what is necessary.
we,
We used the architect's estimate based on a presentation that Gary Harvey presented to the school board and to the board of supervisors. I guess it's probably been, what, 3 or 4 years ago now. And so that was the basis.
3 or 4
for
years
the
ago?
Application.
But again, what we're working with our architects is what can this money get us now? Knowing that this is, whether that's the estimate, so they're going through identifying the things that can be done.
and so
So what I'm concerned about is we bring the architects here, and the question is more about the debt service funding rather than the questions of.
it's
the
probably gonna be
architecture
both.
And that's, you know, like, and again, asking questions, I don't think anybody has a problem with it. Like, my concern is that aspect that I think if that's something that we're aware of was the problem, then
Sure.
we can plan accordingly.
All right, board, we delaying, we voting? Are we adjourning?
You think, Skip?
Well,
I'd like to, if I might, read the March 28th letter, which we voted to send on March 28th. Says, Nelson County School Division 2023 School Construction Assistance Program application. To whom it may concern, the Nelson County High School renovation project is currently included in the school division's capital improvement plan. Should the project proceed to implementation, the Nelson County Board of Supervisors would commit to providing local revenue dedicated to the school division that would be sufficient to operate and maintain the facility for the duration of the project financing term. Grant funds are requested to partially fund the cost of the renovation, which will include electrical, mechanical, lighting, plumbing, and upgraded floor and wall surfaces. The anticipated cost of the renovation is $24,517,032, though actual costs will not be known until the project is bid. Respectfully, Jesse N. Rutherford, Chairman, Nelson County Board of Supervisors.
And we respectfully don't know what the costs are really gonna be. So my point was 24 million, it will very easily, we could find a water issue that could turn into an extra few $1 million. That's a very real scenario.
I know, but the issue is the need. The need is there.
But if it comes in at 24 million, that's suggesting that we're all prepared to do that.
What's that? It also depends on what board is at the time that this comes about. Like here we are today, getting our first real public hearing. As far as I know, I can't remember any other votes that we may have had on this $2 million, or not $22 million.
And I'm gonna ask a question I asked before. All right, the $24 million, like, the grant is for 10%, right? When does that $24 million have to be spent by?
The 2.5 million has to be spent by next October.
But the additional
But the
money,
rest of it, but it has to be contracted. We have to have shown.
it has to be contracted by when?
I don't know that we have the date on that, but the whole project, this is 10% of the total project. So it can't go on indefinitely. It is subject to appropriation being made available for the program in the 24-26 state budget. So I believe your window is the 24-26 biennium. I'll get clarification on that though from the DOE.
And so that, leads into the other part. Our debt service obviously wouldn't be immediate, similar to the jail project. It would be over those next 3-4 years.
The debt service would be over the term of the financing.
Right.
Which would occur in the next couple of years.
All right, board, what are we doing?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve resolution R 2023-65 amendment to fiscal year 2023-24 budget.
All right, we have
Presented.
a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Mr. Reed. Any further discussion? Let's get a roll call vote.
Mr. Barton,
Yes.
Mr. Parr,
Yes.
Mr. Reed.
Yes.
Mr. Rutherford.
Yes. All right, let's move on to other business. Is there any other business at this time? All right, let's make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Reed. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Just so y'all know, there would have to be a public